Welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast, where we make a daily offering to the divine by putting our past on the pyre, searching the smoke for spirituality, turning the ashes into art, adapting isolation into connection, and manifesting mental wellness. I'm your host, Ross Cessna, and I'd like to take a moment and focus on what we're grateful for today. Today, I'm grateful for the people that'll tell me the truth about myself. There's often times where I'm not able to see things about myself, and having people call me on some shit, it helps me immensely. And with that, I'd like to get into a couple quotes for today. All the gods, all the heavens, all the hells are within you. And that was said by Joseph Campbell. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. And that was said by Carl Jung. Having had the longest amount of darkness in a day yesterday with winter solstice, I find it only fitting to talk about our own darkness, or the shadow, as Carl Jung put it. The shadow is an unconscious complex defined as the repressed, suppressed, or disowned qualities of the conscious self. They are often the opposite to the persona or mask we show others. Oftentimes, if one has a persona of kindness, they may have suppressed the darker sides of themselves. If one has an overbearing attitude of hate and violence, they may have suppressed the kind, caring qualities of themselves because they viewed them as weakness. Essentially, the shadow is what hides behind our masks. According to Jung, the human being deals with the reality of the shadow in four ways: denial, projection, integration, and or transmutation. Denial of the shadow can best be expressed, in my opinion, by not seeing the own faults in one's actions. One presuming to be highly spiritual but spewing hate speech, putting down others, justifying immoral acts, basically oblivious to one's own darkness. I would say this is one of the most common based upon what I see in the world and on television when I do watch it. I cannot say it's more or less common than the next way people deal with the shadow, as it would be an arbitrary assumption. Projection is the next way of dealing with the shadow. Projection of the shadow is best explained as the following. Picture your eyes as a movie camera, and the screen for your own darkness becomes other humans. Another example would be criticizing another person or being totally floored by their behavior without recognizing you are doing the same thing yourself. Basically, you cast your own darkness on another and think yourself better than, ignoring the fact that everyone has some dark tendencies to integrate or transmute. This is the other frequent expression of the shadow, the other being previously mentioned, the denial of the shadow. Next, we come to integration of the shadow. Integration of the shadow is a conscious effort one must take to identify these behaviors or thoughts, accept them for what they are, why they were developed, and begin to heal them. It takes a lot of introspective thought, oftentimes a trusted outside perspective, open-mindedness on the one integrating these qualities, and the ability to love oneself regardless. It can be viewed as shining a light in the darkness. It is akin to learning to love parts of ourselves we had to hide or suppress, often in early childhood. Loving ourselves after acknowledging the parts of our shadow we become aware of are crucial to integration. This is less common than the previously mentioned, in my opinion, which I will not state as fact. Finally, we arrive to transmutation. Transmutation is derived from the Latin word transmutar, from trans plus mutar, or to change. After we have worked on the integration of the shadow to a conscious part of ourselves, we can then begin to work to transmute it or change it. Paraphrasing Jung, gold lies in the shadow, which is why transmutation is a powerful word, because it also is prevalent in alchemy, which in my opinion is more of an allegory for a mindset than the actual conversion of base metals to gold. I have seen through the lens of internalized alchemy at times in my life, initially as a child, then through the use of psychedelics, and most recently through drug-free living and insight. Jung viewed this as a lived process, and by this I mean ongoing. It is believed that at times we still fall into the shadow, acquire new elements of the shadow, and parts will surface and then be concealed. This is the least common in my opinion, that being transmutation. In my own life, I would say I am at all stages at once. Denial. I have said it before and I'll say it again. My bullshit is an iceberg in a snowstorm. I may uncover part of it and then something else gets covered up. That's without even looking at the massive amount hidden underneath the surface. This denial is shattered by people whose opinion you can trust, who can convey these messages without setting off your defense mechanisms, or after said defense mechanisms are triggered, actually evaluating the validity of said statements. Projection, it is often said, how you perceive others is a reflection of you. I find this to be true many times. Recently, someone projected themselves on me. My quote-unquote enlightened mind, and I say this jokingly, responded by projecting me on them. Projection can be pointed out by others, but it can also be falsely labeled, in my opinion and experience. Projection is best observed by the projector and is usually found for me by remembering how I perceive others as a reflection of myself. Integration is the acknowledgement of said parts of the shadow into unity with the individual's consciousness. For me recently, this is realizing how egotistical and self-obsessed I can be. Other things I have had to accept and learn to integrate recently would be my neediness when I am romantically attracted to someone, desire for instant gratification, and the impulsive need to speak or be correct. I have not integrated these things entirely yet, but I am working on it. Transmutation. Transmutation is the ability to channel those suppressed elements of ourselves into the gold Jung talks about. I do this most commonly in creative pursuits by turning emotional pain or burdens into tangible things like song lyrics, poems, art, etc. It doesn't have to be a physical transmutation either. I have also turned some of my repressed elements of myself into lived experience, which the sharing of can, in my mind, keep them at the forefront of my consciousness. It can heal them through radical acceptance and potentially help others who have experienced or are experiencing similar situations. I have a long way to go on my shadow work. There are many nooks and crannies that need to be explored, illuminated, accepted, and transmuted. Also, I believe transmutation can go the other way as well. So essentially, this is a lifelong process that at this stage, I am gladly willing to accept. And I'm never going to be perfect at this. I'm going to make mistakes at it, and like I said, parts of it are going to be concealed when parts are revealed. That's the nature of it. Acknowledging that I have dark parts of me and that I'm not some saintly person or I'm not holier than thou is fundamental for me moving forward in my life, because I've really lived both extremes where I thought I was the cream of the crop of the holy, and I literally thought that I was one of the worst people that ever lived, and my soul was going to be extinguished for how horrible I was. That was in psychosis. Psychosis 2, I also thought I was a messiah. So I'm really more along the lines of in the center with things. In Kabbalah, there's the belief of the third pillar, and that's unification of the left and the right. And that's really what I'm working towards. I'm embracing my feminine and masculine qualities. I'm embracing my light and dark tendencies, and I'm trying to unify them into one whole that I can use to be more effective at my life and my life purpose, which is to help other people, in my opinion, and to help those that want help or that find value in my work. I'm not going to go out there and try to save everybody or say that my philosophy or opinions or perspective is the correct one or that it's correct for everybody, because that's fundamentally against what I stand for. I stand for unity, certainly, and part of unity is tolerance of differences. That's where the strength in unity lies. It doesn't lie in conformity and having everyone be the same. I may be one of the few people who hopes that their work becomes unimportant, to where people don't need to be healed and people don't need to have this knowledge shared. If I could do that, I could find something else that I wanted to do. But at this point in my life, this is what I'm called towards. After experiencing addiction, one of those addictions being to alcohol, the other to pot and psychedelics. And I realize some people will say pot and psychedelics aren't addictive, and that's good if they're not for you. You don't know how I lived my life. And the other thing that I'm trying to raise awareness of and destigmatize would be mental illness. I think that mental illness exists in some capacity in all of us, and I think that addiction in some capacity exists within all of us. Some of us may have healthier addictions, but there's still other things that I feel that we put off as a whole. Granted, some people are more successful at those things. And with that, I'm going to put this episode on the pyre. Check below for a link to all my social media accounts. There's also a link down there for some tarot card readings that I do. I haven't done one yet this week, so I'd like to get to that at some point soon. Also, if you want to be on the show, if you have a positive outlook, philosophy, or spiritual experience relative to overcoming an obstacle in your life and it has an inspirational message, I'd be happy to talk to you. Get a hold of me on Facebook. That information is below as well. And with that, love and light. Namaste.